All right, so we're going back to we're continuing our little series on Cayde 6. This is probably going to be the last week that we read from Cayde because I imagine we're going to get some promo lore by next week.
Some juicy bits.
Yeah, some juicy bits. We're gonna read two selections here. Are we only gonna do two? Yeah, we'll do two this week. We'll do two next week. This first one is called Fold. Ever heard of Andal Brask? You should have. One of the old heroes. Before Black Gardens and Hive Gods and that cabal-shaped mess we just cleaned up? Yeah, he was something. Hunter part of the Vanguard before yours truly. More importantly, he was my friend. A brother, even. Andal and I used to run with one heck of a crew. This was before he got himself roped into fire teaming up with the top brass. Oh, we were legendary. Ran scouting parties looking for survivors to lead back to the city, mapped lost sites where old tech or supplies might still be worth the salvage, hunted plenty of fallen, never an easy task, especially in the early days. By early days, I mean my early days. A lot of Guardians been around longer than me, but even in my newborn new life, the city had a lot of growing up to do, and us Guardians had a hell of a lot to learn. Trouble is, we only ever seem to learn the hard way. The Red War. That time Crota woke up cranky and slapped around more Guardians than I can count. The Twilight Gap. All the bad that happened before my time. The Iron Lords and their tussle with Siva. The Six Fronts. And those are just the headline grabbers. So many lessons learned, so many lives lost, but in truth, I've always felt it's the day-to-day struggles where we learn the most about the world and about ourselves. Being inside the city walls, sure, we're reminded of what we're fighting for, but outside the walls, it puts a face to all we've lost. Puts a reality to how far we've fallen. Abandoned roads, crumbling cities, ruin, and rust. But if the city gives us reason to fight for the now, those old dead places always give me hope for tomorrow. Rusted, broken skeletons or not, if you squint, you can see all we were and all we can be. That's why when Andal left the road and joined the Vanguard, me and the crew hoped he'd get the others, Osiris, Zavala, even the Speaker, to see what we saw. The city was a refuge, yeah, but if we hid too long, let all we'd lost get picked apart by pirates and warmongers, we'd lose our humanity, just like we lost Andal. Andal Brask was killed by Taniks. We've been over this the last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Killed by Taniks, and that's what led Cayde to having to take up the dare, to having to be the Hunter Vanguard. And led to his literally lifelong obsession with hunting Taniks. And it's kind of amusing that we still have to kill Taniks a final time after Cayde's death.
Right.
I like this because it talks about needing to protect the city, but that you can't get the true perspective of what you're fighting for until you're out in the wild. And I think that's funny because so many of us, like myself included, have been forever like, I want to explore the city. I want to see what I'm fighting for. This is basically telling you, like, you don't need to see the city. You can look down on it from the tower, but get your ass out there. There's work to do.
Yeah.
I like that. Like, Cayde's one of the very few people, I think, that has ever truly understood what it means to be not just a hunter, but a guardian. He's one of the few that actually, like, grasps that. And this next one is called Flop. I play nice with the Vanguard now, but it wasn't always that way. Not that we were enemies, we just tended to see things through a different lens. But Andal, playing nice was his forte. He was always more, I think, diplomatic is the word. Our big play back in the day was get the Vanguard to loosen their leash. Let us explore, let us lead a new era of expansion, and the riches of the system would be ours. Ours as in everybody's, of course, though we'd get our own cut. In hindsight, we were way too ambitious. Didn't see it in that light at the time, but then again, you never do. When Andal joined the Vanguard, he was our inside man. It was a sweet deal. He would drop intel on new stashes or fallen movements, and Shiro and I would jump the gun, hit him first, claim what we could, deliver the rest of the city. Maybe we skimmed a little off the top. Nothing excessive, just a finder's fee. Probably shouldn't be putting all this out there for anyone to judge. What's the statute on limitations on misspent youth? Whatever, long time ago. But it speaks to what I'm getting at. I always tried to do right, even if I occasionally got sidetracked. Andal joining the Vanguard was a gift in some ways and a bummer in others. More importantly, he'd made a deal, given his word to me and to himself when he took the dare. I won, he lost. So he left the road, joined the bigwigs up in the vanguard, and he reminded me of a lesson I've always known, but every now and then would forget. You give your word, you keep it. But the longer Andal was up in that tower, caged, my word, never his, the more he saw things the vanguard way. Looking back, he was only ever doing the right thing. Seeing him change, and in truth grow as a guardian and as a person. I never admitted this, but I thought less of him. My best friend, my closest ally. All because he stuck to his word, accepted the dare, and even when he came up on the bad end, he never wavered from doing exactly what he said he'd do. Join the damn vanguard. Leave me and Shiro to have all the fun. I thought he was a sucker. Turns out the only sucker was me. So it's pretty clear, like, as we read more of these, like, these are Cayde's memoirs. This is the man who they called Cayde. We get this book and unlock it after Cayde's death. We unlock it throughout the campaign of Forsaken. I like the little nods that we get to the universe in here about, like, they were mapping lost years, essentially, that we then find. That's kind of the hint that's given to us here. But really giving an insight to Cayde's psyche, and really, like, that of whoever becomes the Hunter Vanguard. Like, I think that sets us up in a really prime way for the Crow to take that mantle. Whether it's that or, and we'll talk about this one next week, because I think I'm finally ready to have this discussion about Crow possibly being the next speaker.
It's been that's been a theory floating around.
Yeah, we brought it up briefly at the end of last year, and I said I didn't want to talk about it until the new year because I really wanted to, I wanted to think on it. I wanted to do some reading, come to a conclusion, and spoiler alert, I definitely think that it's in the cards. It's much more plausible than the Ikora is going to be the next speaker theory that's been floated for 3 years.
Yeah.
But
I think it's more likely Ikora leaves the Vanguard than it does become the next speaker.
I think the Vanguard is going to fracture irreparably by the end of this year, and it'll be further accented by the Witch Queen. Not to get too far off task here, but Paul Tassi on Forbes had a really good article the other day saying that a Dark Guardian is the perfect enemy for us to have to go up against in the future, and he proposed Dark Anna Bray from the Exo Stranger's future that we were reading about a few weeks ago. And the more I think about it, the more I think that if that happens, it's gonna be during the Witch Queen. I do think that's when Eris's story will likely come to an end finally. If that is when we take down both of the Hive sisters, that storyline, the Crota and Oryx storyline, will finally be finished off. Even though I thought for a long time Sabathun would be one of the ultimate final enemies. I could even see the Veil being introduced with the Witch Queen. You gotta have something. If the Hive aren't going to be as important anymore, you gotta have something to take that place.
Right.
And if that's going to be your final enemy type, go for it. There's so much you can do with these characters, and I agree. I think, especially with the introduction of Stasis, it's high time that we have to fight some of these guys. Like we've already seen, in the Empire Hunts, for example, and with Aramis, them using the very powers that we can use, throwing them against us. Like, okay, we're not getting ice axes thrown at us, but we're getting frozen. We're getting hit with grenades, with ice blasts. A mini Winter's Wrath in a lot of ways.
Right.
You're getting hit with some of this. What if you had to fight a Dark Guardian? One that fell to Stasis, because all Elsie says is that we didn't go down that path. We don't know how many Guardians are going to be corrupted ultimately by this.
Right.
And there's very clearly some stuff still to happen on Europa.
Now,
with the ziggurat and whatnot.
I have questions about the Veil. What is the rumor about the Veil?
So the rumor about the Veil is there was a 5th race that was planned for Destiny 1 and that was cut, and it was supposed to be a race of darkness. Most of us assumed this was the Taken. But from what we've come to understand, it was never the Taken, because the Taken are really reskinned enemies.
Right.
Like the Scorn and Siva enemies.
Right.
they just they act and behave differently with different powers, but they're functionally still like Scorn are still technically X Fallen,
Right.
and the Taken are X everything.
Right.
So the Veil was intended to be a living embodiment of the darkness, from what I understand. Like there is concept art out there from I don't remember if it's from Destiny 1 or Destiny 2 of a home world of the darkness. And it's one of the fucking creepiest things I've seen in Destiny. Like, if we go there, I'm going to be terrified. It's like an entire planet that's like, imagine that the Dreadnought was clean. And then imagine that as a planet.
Is it this one with like the
should be like some statues around, I believe.
statues with like some green glowing underneath like
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
And I mean, as we've seen with Europa, there is no stature on how far back they'll reach into the concept art to bring a concept or a planet forward.
Right. Because
I think it's
Europa is literally the
like,
first image they ever released.
Yeah.
Was the fallen walker with the not the captain, the Vandal walking next to it was in a snowy planet. It was Europa. Like it's literally the first page of the Destiny 1 art book.
I am extremely excited to see if we go there, since they're swearing that we're not unvaulting a destination this fall, but the way it was phrased made it sound like we're not unvaulting one of the things we just vaulted, but there's still hint room for the Dreadnought hint.
Yeah, like I feel like the Dreadnought makes the most sense, especially if you know what I mean.
Does.
Like especially like okay, if you're gonna introduce a raid with the Witch Queen, and then you could bring back unvault the Taken King at some or the King's Fall at some point, and you know what I mean. Just like they're doing with Vault of Glass, like
right.
That just makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens. Like I know it's kind of got off the beaten path of Lore Corner, but I guess the speculation second. I don't know what else you do beyond that.
Yeah.
And that's a good problem to have, I think. Like, it's so open-ended. Like, the gameplay, or the loot, and, like, the issues with stasis may be problems that we're going to talk about. The playlist problems, which we've brought up numerous times now.
Mm-hmm.
But the lore, I firmly believe, has never been better, and it's never been more accessible. The pages that you get from doing the Hawkmoon quests, and that you get from doing the triumphs related to those missions, unlock a lore book that talks about Uldren finding Spider for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That's one hell of a thing. I don't, what else do you do at that point, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
But that's going to wrap Lore Corner for this week. We'll do our final installment of Cayde next week.